Well, once again, it's been a while since I've had anything to talk about here on the channel. But today I'm really excited because we're back to talking about my main jam here on Paul's Collectibles, and that is full-size Star Wars helmets. Let's get into this. All right, welcome to another episode of Paul's Collectibles. It's good to have you. Thank you for joining me. And today we're talking about my favorite thing to collect here at Paul's Collectibles, and that is full-size Star Wars helmets. Now, it's been a while since I've gotten a helmet in, so I'm really excited to get back on the horse and get back in front of the camera to talk about this one. Plus, there's a few things that are unique about this one as well. First off, it's not a trooper helmet. I have the Darth Revan helmet from Jazwares that was sold by Gamestop. Now, I'll admit, I'd never heard of the company Jazwares before, but I went to their website and they sell a very interesting line of different types of collectibles, most of which is not anything that I'm going to be interested in. But as I see, every now and then they'll come up with a full-size Star Wars helmet, i.e. this Darth Revan helmet. Also, I often forget that GameStop actually carries helmets and figures as well, because I just associate them with video games, which is not really my jam. So I was lucky. I was made aware that this helmet was coming out by one of my viewers on my YouTube channel, and I wanted to thank that gentleman once again for commenting and asking me, hey, have you seen this new Jazwares Darth Revan helmet that's coming out, Paul? You should check that out. So naturally I did. And finally, the caveat here is I don't know a whole lot about the Darth Revan character. I know he was a Jedi, and then he was a Sith, and he might have even gone back to being a Jedi, but most of the media in which he has appeared is not the kind of stuff that I pay too much attention to. I think he's been in he's actually on a cell phone game as I understand it, and he's also, I think, been in video games and in some of the comics and maybe the expanded media. But I'm mostly just the TV shows and the movies type of guy, so he hasn't shown up in there, so I don't know a whole lot about him. So we're going to take a look at this helmet, but we'll look at the quality specifically as it pertains to coming from Jazwares, and maybe I'll pull up a picture too of Darth Revan to see if we can get an idea of how screen accurate it is. But with that, let's get this thing in front of some lights on the review table downstairs and see what we got. Okay, so here it is in the box, and first of all, I mean, this box is massive, and it's the only helmet I've ever received that has an open plastic face so you can see what's inside. I mean, this would be great for displaying on a shelf in a store. Got the Disney logo up top, Star Wars down here, Darth Revan down here, some other legalese, and the top of this box is open a little bit as well, as you can see down in there, and on the top here it says Star Wars Darth Revan. On the side is open as well. This is just, it's really interesting display choice here. Kind of different than anything I've ever had. And they kind of got part of the logo for Star Wars right here. And then on the back, you get a good picture of the helmet. And as you can see, this comes with a cowl. Once again, another first for me, which I've never seen. So let's just get this thing out, because in the box, it's, as you can see, it's really taxing the size limitations of what is supposed to be my figure review table. So let's take a look. Okay, so this is one of the best packed helmets that I've ever received. It came inside a plastic form inside that box, and this part right here actually had a plastic connector that was pierced into the plastic form, so I had to cut that to get it undone. And right off the bat, first impressions, I will tell you, this helmet is a lot lighter than most of the Hasbro helmets that I've received. As you well know if you've watched any of my videos, I do a lot of Hasbro helmet reviews, and this one feels a little lighter. The plastic feels a little bit, more flexible. So, but also this is at an $80 price point, whereas most of the Hasbro helmets are at about $130 now. The cloth that comes on here, it's a good cloth. It's got this texture in it that you can see, which is pretty cool, and it's it seems to be thick enough to hide whatever's behind it, but not too super thick. It's very, very flexible and movable. So let's get this cloth off and take a look at the helmet itself. Okay, so the cloth seems to be attached to the inside of the helmet with these snaps. Yeah, so it snaps in there so that it'll stay with the helmet. So we're going to get all of that out and take a look at the helmet by itself. Okay, and since we were talking about the cloth and being snapped in, as you can see, there are just probably a dozen, maybe dozens of these snaps on the inside. And when you're unsnapping it, make sure you push and hold against this, because they're on this bit of cloth right here, and it seems to want to come loose. Now, I'm not sure if that's actually the case, but that's what I recommend, because the snaps seemed to be very well put together, and it felt like I was ripping this cloth off as I was unsnapping them. Okay, so overall, as far as helmets go, this is, as I suspected, it's a slightly lesser quality plastic. It's got kind of a weird sheen to it, and it's a little bit more flexible. It looks a little bit more like a toy, even when compared to the Hasbro helmets. It's not bad. The other thing I don't like about it is that it doesn't want to sit up straight. Let me see if I can. It wants to fall to one side a lot, so I seem to got it there. But it's still pretty good looking. As you start at the top here, this gray is probably the most disappointing. It looks like a typical child's toy that we see so often. Let me get a light over here. That we see so often in a lot of child's toys. But when you get down here to the brow, this is more of a flat paint, and they've got a little bit of weathering in it. The visor in there, which is very thin, or yeah, it's very thin, but it's actually very sturdy. And the more of this red paint is probably the best looking paint on here. It's got some more of the weathering. The gold has no weathering whatsoever, which is a little silly if you ask me. It looks a little odd. It doesn't seem to want to go with everything else. And then I don't know if these holes are supposed to be here. Like I said, I don't know enough about Darth Revan, but you can see all the way through these holes into the helmet. So those are just all the way through. And then when you get down, these little nodules here, these are pretty good looking. As I mentioned, this red is probably the best looking color on here with a little bit of weathering. And then these gold things down here look pretty, they look pretty real, for lack of a better way to put it. As we spin around, you can see there's some pieces falling off of it, actually. I don't know what that is. Something just fell off of it. But you can see there's some like molding flaws right in here. I don't know if you can actually see that on camera, but if I move my hand away, it doesn't quite meet correctly here. And as we keep coming around, you can see a lot of like the seams and things where it was put together. There's a huge seam on top here where it obviously was put together in separate pieces. There's a manufacturing flaw in the top here, and you get a lot more of this silver, which just, you know, it's really not that spectacular looking. There's no weathering, there's no depth. There's a little nodule there. I'm not sure what that's for. As we keep coming around, you continue to get the same thing. Here's a good example on the back here. Where this piece here is, I can actually kind of pull these apart, and there's a seam down the middle here. So if I was going to be perfectly honest with you, it's not a bad helmet overall. It's definitely not the Hasbro style of helmet that we're used to, where you get pretty decent quality for price. Once again, this is about a $80 helmet, so it's a good $40 to $50 less, and you can definitely see that. It's much more toyish. When I push this together like this, you can feel it go together. I think this would probably be best displayed with that cloth over to hide most of the detail, or the lack of detail, that you get on the rest of this. Let's see the inside real fast. So on the inside, it's got that, looks like kind of the standard. There's a big huge cup up there for your head, and the helmet rig is adjustable, but it's a super rudimentary process with just one loop through at each end there, and the rest of the interior of the helmet is left undone. And if you look there, you can see through the slit, and you can see those holes that I was talking about earlier as well. So final thoughts. Is this a phenomenal helmet that I think you need to rush out and get right away because it's got to go in your collection? No, probably not, to be perfectly honest with you. It's more of a toy. It's lesser quality than what we're used to, but it's also at a lesser price. And it comes from a company that ostensibly markets most of their things towards younger kids. So this is even for a younger audience than, I would say, the Hasbro helmets. And it's definitely nowhere near what we're going to see with like the screen accurate screen props and stuff like that. This is a fun little thing to have, maybe to put over in the corner of your display room. Unless you're a huge Darth Revan fan, then maybe you could mod this or paint it and make it a little bit better. But overall, it's you know, it's about a 5 or a 6 on the scale of 1 to 10 there. Nice mass-produced, toyish type product. Kind of fun to have and look at, but for me, it's probably going right back in the box and getting stored away until I get a bigger room, because this is not going to outclass most of the other helmets that I have. And in closing, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, maybe consider doing that for me. That's a great way to support my efforts here at Paul's Collectibles. And if you're already a subscriber or someone who's been watching my videos for a really long time, you already know I greatly appreciate you. And with that, I'll see you on the next video.